Today we decode The Falcon and the Snowman, a true Cold War drama story where quiet choices become treason. Is this movie any good? Take a listen. We're going to go over the pluses and the minuses of The Falcon and the Snowman. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. We have a bit of a difference of opinion on this one, I think, which we'll explain as we go along.
Now, Dan, I always ask before we start these, is this movie a spy movie? So is The Falcon and the Snowman a spy movie?
Yeah, it's a spy movie. These guys are doing espionage for the Russians. So, yeah, they're spies. They're self-assigned spies, but they're spies. And stuff like this happened in the real world. It's based on a true story. So we're going to find out.
You don't sound very enthusiastic. What's up?
First, I tried to watch this movie a couple of years ago. I turned it off after about 15 minutes because it was tedious and unwatchable. Since we were doing since we're doing this episode, I forced myself to watch the whole movie, and I have to say, it gets better after the first 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes is tough.
Ouch. Now, I will say, for me, it's the first 17 minutes, but 15, 17, whatever.
Okay, all right.
It
17,
does get
15,
it does get better. It starts out way too slow, way too boring with what they're trying to do, and we'll talk about that. But I do think it picks up. And interestingly, this does have an 83% tomato meter and a 70% popcorn meter rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is higher than I would have given it.
Yeah, that's surprising.
You have to get through the terrible start to do it.
Yeah.
Now, we'll talk about this start. The Falcon and the Snowman is a different spy movie than most we've decoded. It has very little action. It's fairly cerebral, and it's slow.
Yeah, this is not an action movie, so all you action movie fans, skip it. It is a story based on a true story, as we said, and that story unfolds in front of us. It's more of a character-driven and character development story than any other kind of story, I think, at least for the two main characters. And I normally prefer more spying and less action, but this movie overdid it, I think, on that end. That's my opinion so far.
It does replace gadgetry and glamour with human motives, right? Because
Yeah.
these guys are trying to figure out what they're going to do. There's a lot of moral ambiguity in this thing.
Yeah.
And there's this long-term friendship that quietly corrodes during what happens in this movie.
Yes.
So here's a high-level look at the movie. As you mentioned, Dan, The Falcon and the Snowman is based on a true story. The real events took place between 1974 and 1981.
Right.
So there's this guy, Christopher Boyce, who's played by Timothy Hutton. He's a disillusioned defense contractor with access to classified communications. He recruits his troubled childhood friend, Andrew Dalton Lee, played by Sean Penn, and he wants him to be his courier, selling top U.S. secret documents to the Soviet Union. Now, he has a deep interest in falcons, and he has a pet falcon, which is why in the movie he is the Falcon.
Yeah. And then when you say Dalton Lee is troubled, he's a drug pusher who has no problem taking risks, and he takes all kinds of risks because he's on drugs. He is pushing white powder, of course, which is why he is called the Snowman in this movie. And we see that the two of them were altar boys when they were young. And that
goes away fast.
But that's in the long, boring introduction to the real plot of this story. Also, they're selling these secrets to the Soviet Union, and it just happens that Aldrich Ames started selling secrets to the Soviet Union. And Timothy Hutton, who's in this movie, played Ames in the movie Aldrich Ames, Traitor Within. So this type of activity was common and real. It happened in real life a lot, and you remember some of the things that have happened in real life. The Cambridge 5, the Cambridge 4, or whatever they were.
Yeah. And Timothy Hutton plays a really good traitor. So I guess, he's done it twice. Okay. So what begins as an idealistic and profitable scheme of selling these secrets quickly unravels because Lee is really volatile. He gets greedy. He escalates his risks, which exposes both of them to suspicion. There's betrayal, and there's ruthless realities of espionage in here. So from an espionage story, it's all right. You just have to get past that beginning. And their friendship and freedom collapse under the consequence of their action. So again, this is a very tight friendship they've had. So both men have to face profound legal and moral fallout. And this is an unraveling of their lives, and I thought that was well done.
The movie turns the mechanics of spying into a moral drama, showing how ordinary people are recruited or choose to sell secrets, rationalize treason, and ultimately pay the price. It treats espionage as a human failure, not glamour, like we normally see in these spy movies. So here you see the guts and the grit and guts of spying. And again, these are two guys in this movie who aren't spies. And when two ordinary people throw themselves into the spy world, they're ill prepared for spying. And it shows in this movie.
Well, but the one thing I will say is since Lee was a drug pusher or a drug runner, he was pretty good at evasion and acting on the spur of the moment with things. So,
Sometimes there's that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, why these guys chose to be spies, we know that MICE, M-I-C-E, is an acronym used in espionage to describe the primary motivations for virtually any individual to spy or betray their country: money, ideology, compromise or coercion, and ego. And here it was some ideology and some money. It also has a slight tie into the Netflix miniseries Pine Gap, in that some of the secrets Boyce was selling had to do with this real-world joint U.S. and Australian satellite communications and signals intelligence surveillance base in Australia. The Pine Gap miniseries wasn't about Boyce, but it was about Pine Gap.
In the real world, Boyce talked about Pine Gap in more detail in the court case.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentioned here in this movie, though.
Yeah.
So that covers a high level plot, right? We've got two friends that decide to sell secrets, and not goodness ensues.
Yeah.
Right. So let's
Right,
talk about
so-
some of the positives of the Falcon and the Snowman.
Look, after 15 minutes or so, there are some positives. I'm going to say that.
I
So-
agree with you.
There you go.
All right. So for one, I think the acting was really good. Timothy Hutton and Sean
Yes.
Penn delivered layered performances because these are pretty complex things that
Yes.
make small, costly choices feel devastating, and they show that.
Mhm.
And these roles are complex and nuanced, and somehow these guys make it work. It's a movie that shows us how these two characters change and get sucked into the spy game they willingly jumped into. And there's a lot of emotion they both have to play. And without strong performances from the two leads, there's no way this would have this 80% tomato meter rating.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say, this is like 3 years after Sean Penn did Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I have to say that at times I thought Penn was channeling his Jeff Spicoli character from that one. Yeah. But he was good. He was good in this one. Unbelievable, though. I will say the acting was good.
I didn't get the channeling of Spicoli except at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
During
right.
that
Yeah,
17-minute boring part.
Yeah, that was.
But as the movie went on, I lost the feeling that this was Spicoli because they changed to more of the spy story as opposed to the backstory of these two guys. And that's where you would lose that Spicoli image, if you will. I lost that feeling as the movie went on.
And on and on. Yes. And I think it could have been a shorter movie. It's about 2 hours and 11 minutes, right? That was pretty long.
Well, for this type of a movie, it really was.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll talk about that when we get to the negatives. Anyway, I think Sean Penn did an excellent job here. Lee is a very volatile character. And for me, Penn pulls it off.
Yeah, he underwent a substantial physical transformation for this role, too, as Lee. Penn wore deep blue contact lenses. He trimmed his eyebrows back into a straight line with his eyes. He used a set of dentures to make his teeth identical to the real Lee's teeth. He used nose spreaders to make his nose broader. He grew a mustache and even gained about 15 to 20 pounds for this movie. It didn't look like he gained 15 or 20 pounds to me. It looked like
No, he was not as he was.
Yeah.
He was rail thin as Spicoli.
Yeah, I mean, you can still tell it's Penn, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He does look a little different than Jeff Spicoli.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that Penn's performance showing Lee's volatility is juxtaposed by Hutton's ability to show Boyce's restraint
Mhm.
until Boyce decides not to show restraint.
Until he doesn't.
And so I think
It's all
Hutton
good
does a
until
really
it's
good
not.
job with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another thing in this thing that Boyce had a thing about birds, and he kept a pet falcon.
Yeah.
And Hutton spent 6 months going to a falconry place to learn falconry to be able to do this role because he has to handle a falcon a
Yeah,
lot in it.
he does. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I like that. And I also think that the chemistry between these two worked well, especially since the personalities they were playing were almost opposites. And the
Yeah.
way their friendship heightens the betrayals that we get as the movie progress without the good chemistry doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they had the chemistry.
Yeah, the two characters were well played and they were well developed within the story. Some of the other characters to highlight include the always good David Suchet playing Alex, Lee's contact at the Soviet embassy. Many of us know Suchet from his performance as Hercule Poirot, but he's also been in a bunch of spy movies and other movies as well. He's a very good actor and turns in a nice performance here. His interactions with Lee are the best scenes in the movie, as far as I'm concerned. He's out. He's just outstanding. He's just outstanding.
Well, I'm a huge Suchet fan. I mean, one of the
Yeah,
first movies I remember him in is the TV movie The Last Innocent Man, where he played a very manipulative murderer, and he played that kind of role well.
yeah,
So I like that movie a lot and Suchet's performance in it. We also called him out for his performance in the movie The In-Laws, the remake of it, where he played Jean-Pierre Thibodeau. I mean,
yeah,
this guy's good in almost everything I've ever seen him in.
yeah. So Shea here showed his wide range of acting abilities, really, as his character had to go through many different phases in interacting with Lee and Boyce. And I thought that was terrific. And he went through all of these different emotions, different from calm to anger, fantastic. We should also call out the parents of these two spies. Pat Hingle and Joyce Van Patten play Boyce's parents, and they do it very well. Hingle is especially good when he realizes what his son has done. And we have Richard Dysart and Priscilla Pointer playing Lee's parents. You'll probably remember Dysart from his tenure playing Leland Mackenzie in the TV series LA Law. Pointer played Judge Pellman in that series and had a long career on stage, TV, and movies.
Yeah, we just lost her. She just passed away at the age of 100 earlier this year.
Oh,
And
wow.
the thing about these parents is they didn't have huge roles, but they did show the emotions of parents dealing with these kids. Lee's parents were dealing with this guy who's a drug pusher, and they didn't want to have anything to do with him.
You look at the Leafs parents, I mean, they were disappointed in how their son turned out, and they didn't want to have anything to do with him. Dysart and Pointer show the angst of these parents, I thought, pretty well. And again, made it believable, which is the key in all of these movies. Watch it, you think it's believable, you're good.
Yeah. Now, the last two actors to highlight are Dorian Harewood and Maddie Kaplan, who played Boyce's co-workers at RTW.
Yeah.
They both gave good performances, government employees who like to bend the rules. Now, Harewood, his probably most memorable role was 8-Ball in the movie Full Metal Jacket, which he did 2 years after The Falcon and the Snowman. Kaplan had a much shorter career than Harewood, but is best known for her role as Axel's girl in The Deer Hunter. Her role in this movie is a little diminished, but they both played them well.
All right, let's look at another positive. It's this movie is character driven, and they do a good job. It's one thing I think that did work in this movie, as we alluded to earlier. The movie is focused on the characters, and the way they show these two guys interacting with each other, and the way they interact with the other characters, makes this movie feel more intimate than any kind of James Bond type spy movie. It felt real, kind of like you're looking at some of the spy who came in from the cold kind of real. But this is the real focus of the movie here, not action. So
Yeah, I agree with you there. Now, I think the screenplay is kind of interesting because there's a duality here. It's both a positive and a negative. Robert Lindsay wrote the book, and Steven Zalen helped him with the writing for the screenplay. And they favored mood and procedure and the slow accumulation of consequence. So every clandestine exchange and bureaucratic obstruction deepens the tension that we get.
yeah,
And we mentioned Alex, David Suchet's character, at the
right.
Soviet embassy. I thought the scenes they wrote with Lee interacting with Alex were very well written and very well performed.
Those are my favorite scenes. All right. The screenplay also adds to the espionage theme with its ability to dramatize how ordinary choices and the characters' disillusionments lead to the eventual betrayal we see. Mice again. Lindsay wrote the book that this movie is based on, and since it is based on real events, there is more emotional heft to it than we would get from some of the other modern spy movies or spy themes. So you will feel some of that angst in this movie as you watch it.
And that's for me why the screenplay is kind of interesting because you feel all that, but you have to live through the beginning they wrote.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's a
All right,
problem.
let's talk about the direction and the production. Good? Yeah, come on. The direction is another positive. I think that could also be a negative. Oscar-winning director John Schlesinger directed this movie. He won his Oscar for the movie Midnight Cowboy. That was another gritty movie, but it was a much better movie than this one, I thought.
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Now, I think the positive aspects of his direction come in the form of how he emphasized the mood and tension over the action we've come to see in today's spy movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's well done. But I can't forgive him for that opening 17 minutes.
Yeah, it's tough. I think he also did a good job showing us real espionage in the Cold War era. And it, again, made it feel real. And one of my big things, believable. Like, yeah, this could really happen. And it did. But
Yeah, it did.
but you feel like it is real when you're watching this. And so that is good. Plus, he and Sean Penn, they say, didn't get along very well.
That's an understatement from what I've read.
Yeah. Well, I thought that he got Penn to deliver a very strong performance regardless of that, which is part of what a director's supposed to do. I mean, Penn felt the director disregarded the true story and his acting choices, while Schlesinger apparently had issues with Penn's improvisational acting in the moment kind of approach, which you could see Sean Penn doing. All right.
Yeah, and I don't see him ever having directed Robin Williams if he can't handle improv.
Yeah. Now, the cinematography I thought was decent. Alan Davio did the cinematography here. His cinematography, coupled with Jim Bessel's production design, was pretty well received. I think they did a good job of bringing us to the time period and to the locations. And they used a lot of real locations that added, again, to the realism of the movie. I like the muted tones and the use of shadows to enhance the story here, which was kind of well done. But watching it now, you can't help but to feel it's I don't know a better word, dated. The look and feel of the movie, I mean, it's kind of like dated. I don't know. Again, I don't know the right word, but maybe it didn't age well.
It was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And so of course you're going to see the person at the payphone picking up the phone.
Yeah,
stuff,
but
right?
I don't feel that way about the early James Bond movies from Russia with Love, Goldfinger. I don't feel that way about those movies. This one, it just had this feel. I don't know the word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the next positive is the realism, and we've kind of mentioned this throughout.
Yeah.
We need to remind you that this is a real story, but unlike some of the no way that's real things we see in a lot of spy movies, we get a well-grounded sense of realism here, especially around the spy tradecraft. And the way they showed that tradecraft was really well done, especially with how information gets passed. There's one scene that I just thought was phenomenal. There's some information that gets passed in a rolled up newspaper. And this brush pass happens in a crowded square. A lot of this stuff happens out in the open. But what made this so good is that newspaper changed hands 4 times in about 4 seconds. It went from one person to the next, making it almost impossible to follow. And since they were brush passes, you probably didn't even see all of them.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really, that realism was really, really good.
Yeah, that was good. And it was fast.
And there's a funny recurring bit of realism in this movie where the team in the Black Vault, which is Harewood and Kaplan's characters, that's the team at RTW where Boyce is getting this information from. They make margaritas and mixed drinks in a document shredder. They put the liquid ingredients in it and it mixes them up. And you're thinking, there's no way we would do that. Well, in real life, Boyce's team at TRW did use a shredder to mix drinks. And yes, I said TRW. It's RTW in the movie. It's TRW in real life.
Yeah. That's pretty good. I mean, I like that. I have to try it, although I wouldn't want to ruin a shredder. I don't know how well it would work, but apparently did.
There's also a realistic portrayal of intelligence bureaucracy and some of the operational limits that exist. There's a really good scene where a guy comes in to kind of audit their work. They're checking on them. And I think that's really well done. And then Alex, operationally on the other side of the house, on the Soviet Union side of the house, he can't do everything that Lee wants, and his management has to get involved. And so both of those things felt very real to me of the bureaucracy of the intelligence industry. And we see that in other movies as well.
Yeah. And let's look at the musical score. The score, Lyle Mays and the Pat Metheny group are often praised for their work in this movie. I mean, the atmospheric jazz sound was almost a jazz fusion sound with kind of small group jazz textures and so on. I mean, there's subtle choral touches. I mean, it really helped nail down the movie's emotional tone, I thought, and the whole period feel of the movie. Again, the real stuff happened between 1974 and 1981. So I thought they did a decent job with the music kind of bringing that to light as well, or highlighting that period. And I thought This Is Not America is a punch in the nose kind of piece by David Bowie here. And I think overall the music complemented the scenes instead of dominating the scenes, helping to establish the suspense and the tension that must be there in a true spy story. So I thought that part was good. I'm finding more good things about this than I thought I was going to find.
Well, yeah, I actually thought the score worked.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're finding more good things. That's all I can think of, right? So let's talk about some weaknesses.
Yeah.
And let me guess, your first weakness, Dan, of the Falcon and the Snowman is going to be, let me
you
guess.
better say pacing. You better
pacing?
say pacing. Yeah, because, oh my God, take the first 15 minutes, 17 minutes, 18, 20, I don't know what it was exactly. You could fall asleep or wait 2 years more to watch this movie like I did. But yeah, we talk about pacing with almost every movie, but it is especially bad in this movie. The first part, like we said, drags. A big part of the beginning was to show who these two guys were and build part of the character narrative that we're going to see unfolding throughout the movie. That's what they wanted to do. But, man, they could have done this much more efficiently, I thought. This is a 2-hour and 11-minute movie that could have easily been probably an hour and 45-minute movie or less.
Yeah, I see your point there. I mean, especially when they got past the first part. And the first part could have been done in 5 minutes, not 17. Right. I mean, but even after they got past that, it still seems slow because they were trying to build this tension. Yeah. And so maybe they were going for the slow way the Falcon glided through the air. So they wanted the movie to glide.
Glide would not be the word I would use for this movie. Drift, maybe. But glide, no. I think maybe deliberate pacing is really what they were doing here, which allowed for them to do the deep dives into these two main characters. But glide, no. The movie did not glide. Since this movie is more about relationships and how decisions can dramatically affect everything in one's life, everything, and they show you lots of things that this affected in their lives, I think they just overdid that part of the movie. And some melodramatic moments just slowed it down. For instance, in the beginning, they want to show us that Lee was a drug dealer and was involved in getting drugs from Mexico into the U.S. You know, that's always a big issue even now. So they spent way too long on this, trying to set up tension with Lee's car being searched while the real drug runner is getting past customs. I mean, it was just too tedious.
Yeah, and that scene didn't really help the movie at all. Yes, we are, you could very easily say this guy's a drug runner and not go through that really long, boring part.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. The second negative I think we'll call out is limited suspense and action. Because the lack of action limited some of the suspense in the movie. Yes, there was a little bit of suspense here. This is a spy movie, but not a lot of suspense in it. Now, maybe part of that's because it's a true story, and there might not have been all that much suspense in the true story. But I think that was lacking.
Yeah, no, I thought they did okay with creating suspense, but I wouldn't call it a highlight. So yeah, it belongs here in the negatives because it's not. It wasn't a highlight, but they did create some suspense. Now here's another negative. I thought the supporting roles were not developed enough, but so much time was spent developing Boyce and Lee that we didn't get a lot in terms of the characters being developed of the other supporting roles. We all got what we needed about the parents, but Alex's boss, Mikhail, for instance, who's well played by Boris Lyoskin, he doesn't get developed at all. And sometimes I was looking at this, wondering why he was even in there. I understand he had to go to his boss to get some stuff done. We didn't need to see it though, and I didn't know if that it added much there. And he certainly didn't get developed.
Yeah, my guess there was to show the bureaucratic chambers there, but like you say,
Yeah.
they didn't need to go that far.
Yeah, and Boyce's co-worker Maddie, she was given short shrift here, as has Chris Makepeace's character, who played Boyce's brother, David Lee. He had a little part. He was pretty good, I thought, the brother. I have to say this movie is already 2 hours and 11 minutes, so I am very happy that they did not make it longer. And so I could see why
Right.
they didn't develop these other characters.
But they could have cut some of the beginning out and developed some of these characters.
Yeah,
I mean,
they should have done that.
I mean, Boyce's girlfriend, Lena, who was played by Laurie Singer,
She was good.
you didn't really get much about her at all. And she was fairly key to one of the things that happened when he started changing. All right. We already said the pacing wasn't good and the movie should have been shorter. So I can guess you can have to make shortcuts sometimes. So especially with the supporting characters.
Yeah.
Now, another negative to this at the time was the marketing. The movie had a production budget of about $12 million, and it has a lifetime gross of just over $17 million. So it made money, not a lot, but it made money. It came out in 1985, which was the same year that other studios released things like A View to a Kill, which earned $150 plus million against a $30 million budget.
Yeah.
Spies Like Us earned $60 million against a $22 million budget. Now, these were classic spy action movies, and in the case of Spies Like Us, it was also a comedy movie. But in either case, the marketing was able to focus on what the movie was.
And if you confuse the movie going public about why they should see your movie, you're in trouble.
Yeah, if you can't explain what you're doing.
Yeah. All right. Now let's move on to some common themes that The Falcon and the Snowman has with some other spy movies. Surveillance and tapped phones, of course. One thing we can see in this movie echoes the main theme of the movie, the conversation. We see scenes of eavesdropping, the paranoia that it can bring to someone who thinks that someone is listening. This is key to the conversation and is important to the climax of The Falcon and the Snowman.
Yeah, I like the way they did that. Now, the way that bureaucracy in these agencies is portrayed is reminiscent of the way it is shown in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, or maybe even the Harry Palmer series. You know, in the Palmer series, Harry calls out the humor and the ridiculousness of the bureaucracy. But here in The Falcon and the Snowman, like Tinker, we see the intelligence services as slow, opaque institutions. There's documents, there's misrouted communiques, and the procedure obstacles that Boyce encounters are found in these other spy movies. So I think they do a good job of kind of skewering the intelligence bureaucracy.
Yeah, and let's not forget the initial feeling of Boyce that the CIA was creating lies and stories with misdirections that fooled the public about what they were really doing around the world and doing what Boyce thought at the time was wrong. So all of this is rolled up into this movie, and you see elements of that in other spy movies as well. Let's look at the concept of betrayal. One key theme in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold is betrayal. Its resigned moral collapse beats, especially moments where Boyce recognizes the cost of his choices. It echoes the bleak moral ambiguity tone of The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and other movies of that ilk, where ideology and personal failure replace glamour and betrayal appears to naturally flow. Again, mice. Think of that as the driving element here, and lots of bad things can happen.
Yep. Now, we talked about clandestine operations in this movie, but I want to compare it a little bit to the 3 Days of the Condor. We see the brush passes. We saw that in Condor. The use of ordinary places for covert exchanges. We also see dead drops in movies like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Avalanche Express, as well as here in The Falcon and the Snowman.
Yeah, and we also saw that in From Russia with Love.
Well, that's true. And in Condor and From Russia with Love, we're exposed to true tradecraft done in public. We see how spying is done in public. And another movie, which is based on a real person, which highlights this as well, is Breach, which is about the real spy turncoat, Robert Hansen.
Yes, yeah.
They do a good job with this here.
Yeah. We see a lot of this in spy movies, but it is a highlighted, focused part of Condor and The Falcon and the Snowman. In 3 Days of the Condor, covert exchanges are staged in cafes, libraries, and streets where ordinary background action masks the handoff. In The Falcon and the Snowman, there are dead drop style meetings and furtive exchanges with contacts in unremarkable locations.
I think the way they did that here in Falcon ties into a lot of what we see in other spy movies about how the tradecraft is done.
Hmm.
And so I think that's good.
Yeah. All right.
All right. We also have here, where we sometimes talk about reluctant spies like Hanny in the 39 Steps.
Yeah, all the Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, one of the Hitchcock movies. But sometimes a non-professional just wants to turn to become a spy, which is what happens here.
Mm,
Now, in the 3 Days of the Condor, Joe Turner is an everyday analyst, and his quiet life just explodes in the scene because his coworkers get killed.
yeah.
And it forced him into flight and investigation. So he willingly accepted that role. Now, in The Falcon and the Snowman, Christopher Boyce is an ordinary, disillusioned civil servant who drifts into espionage from an ideological frustration rather than training. Again, neither of these guys have really been trained. And they have to reckon with the consequences of their actions. Why I kind of point this out is both films make the spy story feel personal by starting with a non-professional whose life is upended. And again,
Yeah.
you see that in the 39 Steps and a bunch of other movies, but I think it's a really tight tie with Condor.
Yeah, and all this stuff happened in real life. When the ordinary people turn themselves into spies, guess who they're dealing with? Professional spies and professional spy organizations, and usually they get beat.
Yeah. You think you're smarter than you are because you haven't had the training.
Right. All right. Surveillance and the dread of being watched. We already touched on this aspect of The Falcon and the Snowman, but we also get this in 3 Days of the Condor. Turner is petrified of being followed, and with good cause, of course. You have that constantly in The Falcon and the Snowman.
Yeah. And then there's the whole thing about a stuffed bird too. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's another movie where that's important too, and it's The President's Analyst.
Yeah.
Kind of a goofy movie, but it is a spy movie with James Coburn. But the same thing. It's the constant, I'm under surveillance. I'm constantly being watched. I'm going nuts.
Yeah. And then you have this whole concept of what drove him to do this in the first place. His ordinary life gets upended with this moral mission, what he thinks anyway is a moral mission. In The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Lemus appears to be settling into his mundane role, working in the library and so on. He isn't doing much spying now, but then he's recruited to do another mission. In The Falcon and the Snowman, Boyce settles into his civilian job, performing repetitive tasks like Lemus did in the library in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. But in both cases, we see a transformational thing happening here from your ordinary life to some compromised life where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering what's going to happen to you because of what you've chose to do. That's brought out pretty well, I thought, in this movie. So that's good.
Yeah, I agree. And then another thing that I see in Spy Who Came In From the Cold and The Falcon and the Snowman is the way betrayal is portrayed. And when the character realizes that he's been betrayed, their actions, their facial expressions, all of that, in both The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and The Falcon and the Snowman, really bring that forward because it's a really important part of both movies, and it's done very well in both of them.
All right, I think we've done everything we can do. We've released the Falcon, we've melted the Snowman. I think we're ready to wrap this thing up.
I'm glad we didn't snort the snowman.
We can see that even though The Falcon and the Snowman is a different type of spy movie, it does call on some common spy movie themes. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Now, Tom, you suggested we watch this movie for this episode, even though I told you I stopped watching it the first time I tried. What's your verdict on The Falcon and the Snowman? You think it's worth watching?
Well, unfortunately, the answer here is ambiguous, just like the movie.
Uh-huh.
If you're a fan of action spy movies, you'll hate this movie.
Yes, right? You will.
If you like movies with moral ambiguity, Cold War espionage, or the study of surveillance and tradecraft, then you might like this once they get to the real story. You just have to get through that beginning. So I think the movie works. The problem is you got to get past the beginning to the best parts of the movie. For me, I'm glad I watched it. I really liked the acting. Once the story actually became the story, I actually thought it was pretty good. But it's also a movie I doubt I'll ever watch when we're done with this episode. How about you, Dan?
Yeah. All right. It's a definite spy movie based on a real story. So there are many spy fans who like this corner of the spy movie genre. Whenever you have a movie based on real events, if you're familiar with the real events, then you're matching the movie against reality. You keep finding yourself doing that. A lot of this movie captures what really happened. And the pace up front, like you said, is enough to stop watching the movie. But I'm glad I watched the entire movie because it is definitely better after the first 15 or 20 minutes. There are plenty of others I'd watch first. But if you like spy stories based on reality, you'll enjoy this one for what it is. They tell you at the end what happens. And if you want to know where these two spies are today, they're still alive as of this recording and about 90 years old. That is a wrap. All right, this has been Dan
And Tom
of SpyMovieNavigator.com on our show Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Please subscribe to our show and our YouTube channel right now. We appreciate you spending time with us. Thanks.